Welcome to the Fraudcast. This is a weekly get together between e-commerce, fraud, and risk professionals to talk about the latest happenings in the e-commerce fraud and risk space, and what you guys are dealing with in your day-to-day work. This is a really great place to just hear about what's happening, the latest trends, and to source some advice from other really intelligent people in the room as well. So if you would like to introduce yourself in the chat, maybe your name, your title, the company that you're coming from, maybe where you're located, where you're calling from, so we kind of have an idea of who's in the room and we're not just a bunch of strangers. That's always really nice to have. And then if you would like to as well, throw your LinkedIn in the chat as well so that you could connect with other people. This is a really great group of folks to tap into when you have things that you're working through. You might hear people chat about their experiences, how they handled certain situations, and you may want to follow up on that. So feel free to connect with one another in that way. There are a few ways that you can participate during the session. Of course, you could throw your thoughts or questions in the chat. But our favorite way is for you guys to be on camera with us if you're able to, and taking yourself off mute and interjecting. That's totally fine. This is not a typical webinar session. Yes, Vito brings a little food for thought at the top of each session just to get the ball rolling. But really the space is for you. So if you're coming into these sessions with something specific, top of mind, feel free to take yourselves off mute and interject or use the hand raiser option in the Zoom menu. And with that said, I will hand things over to Vito to kind of kick us off.
What is up, everybody? This poll is going crazy. I love it. It's so good to see so many of you here. We've got a bunch of Arsenal fans in the house. Wild. Did you know we're talking soccer today? Who would have thought? But not too much. We got a lot of baseball people here too. But anyway, I'm so excited for what we're going to talk about today. It's really piggybacking off of what we talked about last week, the whole privacy conscious buyers. I'm just going to get to it because I'm going to explode if I don't. So here we go. Let me pull it up here. Let's rock and roll, my friends. So we're going to start things a little bit backwards today. Okay, we're going to start off in Chef's Corner here because, as you remember, brought to you by Gordon Ramsay, who did contact me and said he was a huge fan of the program. So there you go. Take that for what it's will. Take that for what you will. These are the things that are giving us headaches, right? The private relay. When we run private relay emails into anything that's kind of judging an email address, it might give us a high risk score. And same thing with the IPs that come off private relay. Those VPNs kind of might giving us a risk score, and we might be leaving a lot more people out in the cold because they're just turning privacy conscious. Well, I've got some good news for you today, guys. How about this? We are experiencing the death of single signal supremacy. Try saying that one 5 times quick. But no longer can we just look at that email address and say, well, this is a suspicious email address, therefore I'm going to reject it. No longer can we just look at that IP address and say, well, this is a suspicious IP address, I'm going to reject it. We are going to be left in the dust if we do that. So today I'm here to introduce you to the method. I know for dang sure that if you take this back home with you and you give it a whirl, you're going to see some things you never really thought of before. It's going to change how you communicate fraud problems internally. I think it's going to be a game changer for you. And if it's not, again, I've got the bulletproof vest on. Feel free to shoot your shots next week, or actually, we're going to be in MRC next week. We'll talk about that. The week after, you can shoot your shot. So I get a week to hide from y'all if you don't like it. But otherwise, here we go. Let's talk the method, or il metodo if we get a little Italian here. Why do I bring up the Italian? For my soccer fans there, we're going back to the late 19th century here. Vittorio Pozzo, okay? VP. Look at that. We got a little bit of a connection here. Il vecchio maestro, the old master. What did he do? Well, back in the day, the game was played like this, the WM system, where you kind of arranged your guys like this. Well, my friend Vittorio here said, we're doing things my way. We're doing a different method here, and it's called El Metodo, and it really runs off this holding midfielder here. This holding midfielder kind of like orchestrates between the attacking and defense. We could talk for hours about this. I'm not going to bore you with it, but I want to introduce you to my metodo, and I want to show you who the centro mediano is in this whole game. It's gross loss rate, okay? To calculate gross loss rate, take your approved chargebacks, either the count of it or the dollars and cents amount of it, divide it by the orders you approve. If you're going to stick with count, stick with count. If you're going to stick with dollars, go with dollars. And then, because you want to be fancy and talk bips, because bips is like a cool thing, right? Multiply it by 10,000 and get your bips. So let me show you what that looks like, okay? Part one, set up your playing field. I did that here, and notice the time frame I'm using. I'm not going up to present day. I want to give at least 60 days for those chargebacks who have matured a bit. You might even want to kick it back a little, 90 days and stuff like that. But I've got a good range here of a semi-historic vintage for me to check out my chargebacks. And a bunch of things come up. First, my gross loss rate. We're looking at 6.3 bips of loss here for this test account that I'm looking at. The target for this account that I'm looking at is 15 bips of loss, right? So yeah, cool. Well, wow, we're doing great. We're at 6 and 15 is about as high as we can go. Really cool, right? Well, I'm a never settling kind of person, and I know everyone here is too. We've known each other for so long. I know you guys don't settle for anything. And when I don't want to settle, I don't want to settle at 6. If I could go up to 15, I could always go lower. But also, if I look at my approval rate by GMV, which is the dollars and cents, I'm sitting at about 96.5%. I can maybe eke out a couple of bips there, maybe a couple full percentage points. So that sounds really cool. And then here's what we're looking at with almost $178,000 in fraud chargebacks, just about 1,800 fraud chargebacks. So if I just stop here, I'm kind of like maybe patting myself on the back for no reason, right? So we're going to go on to step 2 of the method. Start by mapping the user journey. And let me back up because I'm really so excited here. We're talking about the death of single signal supremacy. I'm showing you this because it is signal agnostic, right? This is about stuff that you already have. We don't need to get too funky. We don't need to see how many times the user breathed on the phone or what cardinal direction they were facing when they made the order. We don't need to get too deep here, but we're going to see a lot. So when we start mapping the user journey, I like to start with the order channel that things are coming through on. Some of you might have more order channels or maybe even less order channels than this, but you probably got web, mobile app, and then your contact center. Phone, in this case, is the contact center, contacting support, etc. Now look what happens to that 6.3 when I look at my order channels and where things are coming from, right? Whoa, I've got pretty big spikes, almost double the amount of risk in my phone channel. My mobile app is almost double as well, my web. So maybe if I'm going to spend any time looking at fraud or figuring out a way to mitigate, I'm going to start in that phone and mobile app. This is also a good way of showing across your team and across your company, a good way of showing what's going on rather than saying, yeah, there's a lot of crap going on in the phone channel, right? Well, there's 11 bips of fraud if we go back to October of last year, really like Q4 of last year into today. There's about 11 bips of fraud there versus a baseline of 6.3 bips across the entire ecosystem and 5.6 bips in web. So I'm really suspicious about this phone and mobile app, right? Part 3, we're going to get granular now. Look what I added here, okay? I took out the web because web's doing all right, and I added buyer account age. All of you have this information. You don't need to pay a third party to get your buyer account age here. And I kind of bracketed it into a couple of different things. Guest checkout, so people who haven't signed up for an account. Those new accounts that are about a month old. Slightly aged accounts that go between 1 and 3 months. Then 3 and 12 months, and then anything over 12 months. And looky, my friends, wow. My mobile app traffic that is being targeted by people who are on guest checkout has 168 bips of loss. If we were just looking all day at 6 bips of loss across the company, we would have never realized that there's a channel or a kind of a population among us that is so lossy, right? So hold on a second. Let me divert all of my kind of manual review and all of my team to looking into this. As in the method here, as we bring down, we like to bring up too. And look what we see as well. Check this out. In my phone channel, for buyer counts that are between a month and a year old, so anyone who's really been registered for about a year, we have almost no loss. The 3 to 12 month segment has 3 bips of loss, and the 1 to 3 month segment has no loss. But look at those approval rates. We're approving 55% of GMV in the phone 3 to 12 month and 41% in the one beneath that. Now, of course, you're going to say, well, you have no loss there because you're not approving anything, right? Yeah, it's true. Okay. But if we're telling ourselves that we can get up to 15 bips of loss, then we can probably afford to take on a little more loss there, especially if we're going to double down on this mobile app guest checkout that has 168 bips of loss, right? So as we take away, we can add and kind of loosen in the places that have low loss and also low approval rate. Everyone jiving with what I'm jiving with here? Throw a hand up in the chat if you're like, what are you getting at, my friend? But I think we're all kind of on the same page here. And I love this. This is revenue optimization in a nutshell. And we're not using anything funky, you know? So part 4, enhance. Like, let's go a little bit further. Here I filtered out mobile app and guest checkout, which, as we saw before, was that 168 BIP loss segment. I started by just looking at order amount tiers. And I have 2 tiers here, $0 and $100 and $100 and $250. Lo and behold, they're both pretty bad. But what's pretty interesting is that the 0 to 100 is doubly as bad as the higher order amounts, right? So maybe I don't need to concern myself too much with the higher order amounts, but that low dollar amount is really where the fraud lives. So let's enhance some more. Here's the only time I got somewhat kind of technological, and I'm sure you all have this capability. This is nothing, groundbreaking. I added to the order amount tier, I added IP billing distance. Okay, how far is the geolocated IP address from the billing address? You all do this all day. You know this kind of thing. And I broke it down into very simple stuff. Far is anything over 1,000 miles. Region is like within 100 miles. Near is within 50. Okay, and lo and behold, boom. Anything between $0 and $250 in mobile app that is operating in guest checkout and has an egregious or very far IP billing distance has an extraordinary loss rate between 449 bips and 700 bips. So that's what I'm going to run with. And when everyone in the company is asking me how my fraud is looking or what's going on in the fraud landscape, this is what I'm going to tell them. It's not just, I saw some funky stuff coming out of Zimbabwe last week. It was bizarre. I can talk dollars and cents. I could have a much more kind of concrete talking point here. And it's mobile app orders from guest buyers using IP addresses with an egregious geolocated distance from the cardholder's billing address carried a nearly 700 BIP loss rate during Q4. And that's what my team is working on clamping down on. Very cool. We've got our North Star, and we didn't have to do anything crazy to get there, right? So the era of single signal supremacy is over with. We killed it on this podcast. We did it together. Thank you for that. You really, opened my mind to it. And I really want us to move to a position where we're turning our feelings, because there's so many feelings we have being on the front lines, we're turning our feelings into facts. And we're kind of telling stories that resemble product storytelling instead of just war stories about like the bombs that are flying overhead. We can give a really concrete assessment as to what's going on in our order ecosystem, and we can direct our skeleton staff teams better by saying, hey, I want you on mobile app, guest checkout, give me trends, give me something that we can whittle down there. And then maybe if I got other people around, I could say, hey, we're over declining in that phone segment that I showed you all earlier, where we've got maybe 45 or 50% approval rate by GMV, but we have no losses there. Find some good that we can bring up. See how we're kind of balancing out that whole thing. I think you'll make some new friends this way too, because if I'm talking about order channels, immediately product comes into play. I could talk with my product team. Hey, that mobile app's a little lossy. Here's where it's lossy. Here are the people who are using mobile app who are lossy. They're all doing guest checkout. Like, what's up there? Maybe we can, you scratch this, you scratch my back, I scratch yours kind of thing. Maybe we can bridge a gap by telling a story this way versus just coming up with some horrific order examples one by one. So that's a lot of stuff. And I would really love to know what you think about my method, Il Metodo, and whether or not you're kind of doing this method on your own these days. So I'm here to hear from y'all.
Hey Vito, this is Matthew.
Hey, Matthew.
So quick question. Are you doing that research within the Signified portal? And if you are, do you have some sort of like special uh, way of doing it that may because to level set with you, we only use Signified as a decline recovery tool. So we have limited functionality at this point, right? So I'm just curious, like I saw what you were doing with the conditions you're setting, breaking it down. I'm with you. I'm just curious, are you doing that in the Signified portal?
Great question, Matthew. I'm doing that on the back end through Looker, but I'm pretty
Okay.
sure we can get something going there with the Signified portal. I'm not an expert on the Signified portal. However, I do know experts who are on the Signified portal. So once we get off this call, expect your inbox to have a nice little heavily CC'd email with
Okay.
me, you, and all the people who are involved. I want to get you rocking and rolling with that. Do you feel like it's something that can make a difference, especially if you're talking decline recovery? I'm sure you could look at a lot of things on that blue end of the spectrum that have low losses, but also a low approval rate.
Yeah, what you mentioned, I don't know what I don't know on that. And so it's made me think we look at our total chargeback, percentages, and we think in general we're fine. But what you just did was really eye opening to say, okay, maybe I need to take it down another notch. From a guest checkout perspective, that's one. We've got affiliates that do transactions for us as well, and something we could dig into a little deeper. So it's just been helpful to kind of think of it that way. So I appreciate it.
Awesome. And you know what? The affiliate thing is a great thing to call out because maybe some of us here have kind of drop shippers or suppliers or like a broader network. And if we can start seeing the very lossy suppliers on a supplier by supplier level, we might be seeing some sort of supplier buyer initiated fraud. I've seen that a lot with people who use drop shippers and multiple suppliers. We can even talk about one day what that really looks like. And I mean, literally, you have people who are getting phony accounts with stolen credit cards to buy products that they are supplying, but then they'll put something in that delivery address field, and that delivery address field will have like a tilde or a drop on my front porch little thing. And that is the kind of tip, the little nod to the people who are working in the warehouse to not take it off the shelf. And then they're going to file the insurance claim along with the chargeback for lost goods, and they're going to double dip there. So really good call out there, Matthew. Anyone else? What do you think about this?
I actually have something to add about guest checkout and chargebacks, as I was looking at our wins and losses from last year, and I really started to dig deep. I busted out the 1,000-page manual of Visa, MasterCard, and Discover.
Oh, God.
And I noticed on MasterCard, if you allow guest checkout, you have no representment rights.
Whoa.
It's an automatic loss if they notice it. And
Hey, Paula,
yeah.
what was the card company again?
It's MasterCard.
MasterCard. Yeah.
It's right in, if everyone goes to MasterCard's website right now, download the rules, the chargeback rules, and you go to e-commerce and the compelling evidence, there's a section right below it that specifically states if the transaction happens in guest checkout, you do not have representment rights or second presentment rights. So you can't present it a second time. And as I actually worked for a very large MasterCard issuer, and we didn't enforce it because I reached out to my old manager when I saw this. It's something that issuer just doesn't enforce, but some other issuers may. That in your compelling evidence, if it shows that it was a guest checkout, they can deny your representment.
Paula,
can you put that link in the chat? Can you
I
put
absolutely
that link
can.
again?
I could even put a screenshot of it.
Yes. I was going to say,
Right.
Paula, always with the bombshells, and clearly that's a bombshell right there.
It is. When I noticed it, I was devastated. and even I reached out to, there's a group called the House of Fraud, and I was like, hey guys, what is this? And just about everybody concurred, like, yeah, it's you lose.
Well, I want to go down a little bit of a wormhole here right now because I hate to hear that for anyone who's hurting, right? But part of me loves to hear that because I do feel like friction is a generational thing, and that generation is kind of coming to a close. There's like a new generation coming. I see more and more when I transact in e-commerce that I have to create an account. And I think you have the card companies that are kind of driving that. So I'm wondering, and that's kind of maybe back of the head type stuff. Think about that. Is that a harbinger for the death of what we perceive to be friction, or like an overly frictive experience for the buyer signing up for an account? I love to hear it. I hate to hear it at the same time. And if anyone loves to hear it and hates to hear it at the same time, feel free to bring that out there. But I'm a little curious too. Great, Paula. Amazing, amazing, amazing. As always. Is anyone else interested in kind of the details around how to do this? I know I went very quickly there and I was very animated. Is anyone a little like, hey, can we like bring that back a little bit? I want to do this on my end. Like, can you show me some stuff again? Illy.
Hey, just want to add real quick on that because I think Paul's comments are very important. So I have a product background, so you mentioned product people, but one of the things to consider when you're looking at guest checkout is how do you make or how do you make account setup easier so that if somebody is, oftentimes people might choose a guest checkout just because signing up for you is too difficult. It's just something to consider in that user journey. I really like, Vito, that you brought up the user journey. It is absolutely critical. Keep looking at that user journey, try to figure out how to take out that friction out. Because sometimes you get yourself potentially in a situation where you don't have that committed user just because the journey is too difficult. And then if you do have chargebacks, then you get in the situation Paul mentioned. But if you do that, you make it easy for them. Now you know that the people who specifically choose not to have an account with you, you just know more around their intent as well. So you can have different policies in place if that's the case.
And you can justify cranking down a little bit in that regard. If we're thinking very granular here, and we're not just saying there's a one size fits all approach to my decisioning, I can say, hey, yeah, we'll rock and roll almost everywhere else. But if you're guest checkouting on me and I've done something like Illy mentioned where I'm making it a little easier for you to make an account, I'm going to be a little super critical of what you're going to be doing here.
Yeah, if you have an email address, you can consider them you have an account, right? Just click on this, verify, and you're good, right? But you have to look at that journey. It's very important.
I think it also brings up a pitfall too, because now so many websites are offering the sign on with Google option, right? But we see with a lot of ATO, it happens far upstream from the cart or far upstream from the merchant page. And it happens in that Gmail inbox. Because now if I get into your Gmail inbox, I can do Google single sign on anywhere, right? So that's another like kind of funky spin on all of this stuff. But I love it because Paul has kind of blown all our minds. Illy, you've clarified it very well. And I think we can start kind of looking at guest checkout a little bit more stringently. What do y'all think about that? Robert, I'll call on you real quick. In Doll's Kill, right? Mm-hmm. Do you have a lot of guests? Are you allowed to guest check out?
No, actually, I was thinking about that. And also what, was it you, Ike, that just said that? I'm sorry, it's a little small on my screen here. Even within that guest checkout, I think there's people that check out as a guest that really have an account. There could be a lookup there kind of to at least kind of narrow that down a little bit. I mean, I do it all the time, kind of like tickets, that sort of thing. Sometimes I just don't remember my password to get in. It's so much easier, just guest checkout. It sends me an email done, that kind of thing. So there might be something with that. There's not too much guest checkout. We have some stores, and it still does run through Fraud Tool when people are buying at the store. And there is some guest checkout that goes on there, but there's not a lot of guest checkout. Most people have to create an account to, the name, email, phone number, Or maybe it's just doing it automatically. I have to look kind of behind the scenes. I mean, I told you, so what I do is I work FP&A, so I'm not really as involved. I kind of took over the fraud function and chargebacks and that sort of thing. But there's been a long history of customer service owning this. So I need to dig into that a little bit. So, I mean, I like your analysis. Breaking it down is something that I want to go try. And I was also thinking, I don't know if there's a way we use Shopify, if there's a way to get some of that information out of Shopify versus pulling it from a fraud tool, or somehow what's the fastest way to kind of get there is another thing I was kind of thinking.
For sure. It might be a little hairy getting, some of that granular stuff, the channel or the IP. I'm a lucky boy. I get to play with very cool toys here.
Yeah.
But I try not to get too savvy with the toys because I think we can all have some of those things at our disposal easier. But I'd love to hear in the days and weeks that follow if you've had success working with Shopify for that, or in your own internal platforms, kind of what worked and what doesn't. Even if you've got, hey, I've only got 5 different granular elements I can go down. What's my best way? Always happy to help you with that too. So absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I would like to also hear stories around somebody identifies that. What did they do? Because let's say you look at it and maybe it's not a 60% kind of fraud rate, but it's something closer to around 75%. You can still be profitable letting those orders actually go through and still be kind of above water. Of course, you don't want to see your fraud rate go up and that sort of thing, but does that mean you got to contact somebody? Does that mean there needs to be some sort of third party kind of verification? I'd love to hear, hey, we identified this piece of it. What did we do next to solve that?
For sure. I'll let you in on a little secret here. That's kind of my everyday over at Signified, right? So once we get the red one, like the bad boy segment, it's let's dig in here. Vultures to the carrion, right? And we can pick that apart and say, okay, 25% of that is a definable pattern, right? So we'll clamp down on that 25. We'll let the rest kind of, the model will deal with whatever there. But that 25, we're going to get super stringent on because that's the most identifiable portion of it. And then we'll redirect our efforts to the blue parts, the parts that have very low approval rate and low loss. And we'll do the same kind of exercise where we're going to zoom in on that. Okay, 18% of that is identifiable and good. So let's make sure we've got approvals going that way, and we'll crank down on the stuff there. So that's where I suggest sending your manual review teams. I know it's easier said than done because so many of your manual review teams are still going like order by order for a specific, order amount or order type. But you could also get creative about what you're sending to manual review. Maybe manual review is only seeing now the mobile app guest checkout orders in the example that I gave, right? So maybe I'm limiting or tailoring the queue that my manual review team is using to look at. Food for thought. Has anyone gone down this route before or kind of thought in this way before? I'd love to hear from you. Conversely, does anyone think that this is a red herring and, Vito's just kind of getting too excited for MRC and there's all sorts of like crazy thoughts in his head and this is just bonkers stuff?
I'm not going to answer that question, but no, I'm just kidding. No, I wanted to give our caveat to this because I do exactly what you do with like analyzing in that way and to find like what categories are spiking in chargebacks. So we do online ordering for food. So most of ours are actually guest checkout because nobody wants to enter their real info and create an account to just order a coffee. We launched a new product, I think maybe 2 years ago now, called Borderless. So it's passwordless account login. So that you can create an account without having to do a password and it sends a code to your phone. But when they launched that, they made a change on the checkout where it would by default check that you wanted to create an account. So now we have people card testing, but it's default creating an account every time they're checking out. So it looked like we were getting a huge spike in account takeovers and chargebacks that were coming from not anonymous guests, but in reality, they had never gone back to those accounts because they're just checking out, creating an account and moving on. And we also now have a lot of stale sitting accounts that have been created and nobody's gone back to them. So I just want to throw like that caveat out here because it might skew your stats if you have something like that.
And it also gives you a little homework now, right? Because if I've got those stale accounts sitting around, as we've talked about so many times now, a stale account is a bad thing to have in the cupboard, right? And it's going to come back to bite us one day on a showing age when it really doesn't have it. So I will say, even though I know you're going to be at MRC, Kristen, you are on top of your game. That was fantastic. You're way sharper than I am right now. I've got 1 foot in Vegas. So great stuff. We do have a comment here from Kenneth. Manual review team. Does everyone have that? Here it is all auto, either yes or no. How do others manage that? Anyone here operating in a non-manual review team capacity? No manual review for Olo.
Hey, Vito, by manual review, do you mean going actually through the fraud site, or do you mean just corralling those orders and checking them here?
And post cart checkout, before it's fulfilled, you have a team of people who are kind of giving it a look, a human look, and giving it a thumbs up or a thumbs down and saying, yeah, ship this or don't ship it.
Yeah, I do it. Yeah, we do that. Because one of the things when I did take it over, I noticed that we just had the automatic fraud filter and it would just cancel the orders. But I was seeing a large percent of people that actually placed orders in the past. Not a problem. Still haven't figured out how the Shopify Protect works with this, but that's orders already protected by Shopify Protect, or there's just a low risk tolerance. So we've actually absorbed that risk. And I mean, for example, it's very material, like what I'm actually bringing in extra revenue. And what I'm seeing is about maybe like 3% kind of chargebacks for what I'm actually kind of bringing in, which is going to be higher than where you're going to see the average chargebacks. But a huge difference. I look back at like maybe where some of those years were, and there's this money kind of left off the table. It's also not a good user experience if somebody's actually placed 20 orders and it automatically gets flagged for fraud. So yeah, and our business isn't as large as somebody that's doing like a Walmart or Target, that kind of thing where you're doing hundreds of thousands of orders. Our orders are actually containable, that we can actually do that kind of in a day and carve out an hour and a half to kind of go through those orders.
And that hour and a half probably gets a little bit longer during the holiday season, right?
Big time. No, sometimes it can be actually 3-4 hours, that kind of thing. I mean, we have a huge holiday or Halloween business, and we might do what we would normally do in multiple days in one day.
And many moons ago, I was on a manual review team, and when those holidays came around, everyone was kind of looking at each other. I don't know if you've seen the show Severance, but everyone was kind of hoping that they could delete that part of their brain because of the amount of sheer carnage that was going on in those days. It was wild. But interesting to think about what we send to our manual review teams, especially if it's coming off of Shopify or something like that. I'm sure, and Robert, I love what you've added. I'm not trying to give you more homework or anything like that, but I'm sure for everyone here, if we think about the gains we've made by introducing manual review, perhaps, or gains we've made by using manual review, that's a ever evolving space as to how can I keep those gains while bringing the losses down. And maybe there's tagging on certain orders. Hey, alert! I know you've seen 100 orders today, but this one right here is from that bad bucket. Or we've got a special team like a SEAL team that is only looking at the bad bucket stuff. So they might be a little more prone to decline or prone to like keep away. Just thoughts for people here.
Hey Vito.
Yes.
One thing I would add to that, just because it's something that we've experienced and we are currently experiencing, is it also depends upon where your fraud tool sits. If you've got a pre-auth fraud tool versus a post-auth fraud tool, that can drastically impact your manual review teams. And also it actually can change the way they go about doing what they do. So instead of them being a reactive, a targeting fraud, they could be another way of salvaging sales, stuff of that nature. So just food for thought for those of you out there with the manual review piece.
I love that food for thought, and I'm still a little hungry. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe a pre-auth or a post-auth tool that you've used and how you've used it to kind of drive revenue a little bit, or maybe like a strategy you found in using those tools that really helped you, Matthew?
Yeah, so we're in the process now of kind of reevaluating our fraud tools and the way we're doing things. So we sit post off today, and so in that way, we've always been very selective. Certain transactional behaviors come into our team to look at. It's a very small amount, but it always sits post off. So we're always thinking about looking for the fraudulent activity. However, we're looking to move pre-auth, which in turn will allow us to maybe not only improve our approval rates with the banks, but also it'll allow us to drive additional revenue that we didn't even know we were missing out on, to be honest with you. And it's also going to allow us to be more of a proactive team versus a reactive team. In the post-auth world today, it is more reactive. We see behavior, we try to stop that behavior before it gets fulfilled. In the pre-auth, we're able to actually be more of a proactive force. So there's still some things we're working out there, but I will say this: it does change the mindset of your manual review team and really the methodology. It does change it by just that simple pre versus post. So yeah, that's just kind of some of my things I've noticed so far.
Fantastic stuff. There's a lot there. If we go back to the soccer analogy, right? Or the football analogy, if we go back to that, I mean, the perception is key. If you're dealing with human investigators who might get a little gun shy, they don't want to have a bad chargeback on their record, so they might become a little too decliney, right? When you sit pre-auth and maybe you can see an AVS failure before it happens, right? Or you can kind of tell some things before, the end of the road. You may be able to implement a little bit of a strategy better. So that's a great call out. We have so much to talk about, and we have 5 minutes left. Jenna, do we want to bring up what's going on next week and where we're headed and what's going on?
Yeah, definitely. So I know that there's a few of us, at least the folks that have been with us the last few weeks, that will be going to MRC next week. So we will be doing a live Fraudcast at MRC Vegas in our meeting room. I'm going to drop some of our RSVP links. We're going to be doing this across 2 days. So for those of you who have not joined us before, this is your first Fraudcast and you would like to come chat with us in person, it's going to be pretty much the same thing that we do here, except we're all going to be together in person, maybe enjoying some lunch. It's during the lunch hour for those 2 days. So grab lunch, come to the Signified meeting room. We will have an espresso bar and some bubbly in our room to get you fueled up for the remainder of the sessions throughout the day. So like I said, we'll be doing that Tuesday and Wednesday. So please, if you're coming, come say hi to Vito and I in person. We would love to sit down and chat with you. And yeah, so go ahead, and if you are attending, RSVP and let us know if we can expect to see you guys there.
I am so eager to see some of you in person. Well, I mean, all of you, obviously, but whoever's coming, I'm eager to see you. I want to share the results of the poll here, and it looks like returns, fraud, and abuse, ding, 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 is really top of mind for so many people. It's almost like a no blank Sherlock at this point, right? That is where everyone is thinking these days. So we can really double down on that kind of stuff in the weeks coming. Obviously, next week, since we're going to be on the road, there's going to be no Fraudcast in the traditional sense, but we will be back in action the Wednesday after that. Before we transition away, I'm just curious, Matthew brought up some great stuff around pre and post auth. So I'm wondering if anyone has any interest in how to set things up to do kind of a pre versus post auth move, and how to identify opportunities to drive more revenue. Is that something that people would like to hear? I know I'm kind of bucking the poll here, but are people interested in the pre and post auth world and the differences there? Show of hands, come off mute and holler at me. Justin, okay. Matthew's game for it. All right. So we're going to talk pre and post auth as well as returns. And you know what? We can honestly spend the next 3 months covering those two topics, but I promise you we'll do it in bite-sized, digestible, fun pieces. I hope this was fun and somewhat educational for you. And yeah, I just really want to thank you because even though, you know, MRC is next week, it is kind of that point in the calendar for all of us where we can stop and reflect a little bit. And I have learned so much from y'all. And personally, outside of the fraud world, outside of the work world, I've just had fun with you guys. So thank you for bringing excitement to my life every week and for making me smarter. Honestly, you have made me a lot smarter. So thank you for that. You've saved me in many ways just from hearing all your great ideas and being able to think about the things that we talk about and carry them into my own kind of research has been awesome. I hope I've helped you. And yeah, for anyone traveling to Vegas next week, safe travels. I will see you there. For anyone not, we will be thinking about you, and I will see you in 2 Wednesdays from now. So I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. Go Mets, beat the Dodgers. Go Arsenal, right? I guess they're still playing. They never stop playing, so there you go. And yeah, have a beautiful rest of your week, guys. Thank you so much. Until next time, I bid you sweet adieu.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very
Have a good
much.
day.
you.